Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This, and I know I'm going to mispronounce the name, is the Bestech Sambac or Sambac, I'm honestly not sure, designed by Ostap Hell. And look at this, a surprise in MagnaCut. Very cool. What's the HRC? We better get that out of the way right off the bat. 62 to 63 is what they're claiming on their website. One of the first, there's actually multiple, one of the first surprises with this knife was MagnaCut. The second surprise, because I thought, okay, great. Well, that's just one part of the equation. You got to get that heat treat up there. And I don't know about you, but I'm not upset with 62 to 63. That's actually very, very good. There's a bunch of things here with this knife that I really like. This knife was really impressive. And while I know that Bestech is a very capable OEM, they haven't really done a whole lot here recently, like throughout their own line, that just absolutely wowed me. But truthfully, this does. I'm going to link this right down below in the description. You guys can check it out if you want. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks so much to Bestech for sending this in for review. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex, and at least for the time being on TikTok at _metal_complex. Not sure if I should get a permanent card for TikTok, right? So for the time being, it's the paper card. We'll see. Anyways, let's go ahead and measure this guy. It is not a small knife. Overall length here coming in at 8 point... You know, I thought it was actually a little bit bigger. It's about 8.35. Blade length, definitely longer than you might expect. 3.65. Cutting edge, I'm going to say that's all of 3.5 inches. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others, up against the 8010, the 8020.5. I'm trying my best to sound as peppy as possible because, as you've probably been hearing from random content that's popping up on my channel, right? Everything's pre-recorded and scheduled, so they're all over the place. But this is the time of recording where I'm very tired because my third child was born and I am very low on energy. So I'm trying to bring the same personality that I usually do. But truthfully, I just feel kind of insane. So let's see if I can still review a knife. Up against the 8010 and the 8020.5. Excuse me. Obviously, I have to remember to breathe. Obviously, not nearly as robust as something like the 8010, but it is about the same size, almost exactly the same overall length, definitely larger than something like the 8020.5. Up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3, definitely about the same, if not exactly the same overall length as the PM2. I think it's actually a little longer. Way more cutting edge. Holy moly, way more cutting edge with honestly a very similar ergonomic profile that I didn't even realize until just now. Look at that. So close. So close. Not copied line for line, but very, very similar. It's interesting. Some of these knives you can't tell until you really put them up side by side. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. Alrighty. How's the action on this knife? You know what? Bestech does a good job. And this is much the same. There is a little bit of a potential for double clutch right there. It doesn't take much encouragement. It's right here, right at the top. But honestly, if you let it sneak by, you let it kind of sneak up past that detent ball, like right there, the detent ball is well up on the face of the blade. Truthfully, the moment it climbs up there is about right here. But it's probably going to be a little bit tight out of the box, which means when you go to kind of give it that encouragement, right? You can see here it doesn't take much, just a little bit. You might actually, accidentally shake it back up to the point where the blade, or I'm sorry, the detent ball has not climbed up on the face of the blade yet. The knife doesn't actually have double clutch though. You can still do that. You can do this. You can use your index finger, or you can just not be, you know, a nose in the air knife person and just close it with two hands, whatever you want. The flipper tab is shaped really nicely. I think ideally for a light switch, kind of reminds me of a Shirogorov flipper tab mixed with something from Sharp by Design. There is no actual sharp point here. Push buttoning it, you can do it. It's not quite as comfortable. I honestly would just light switch it. I think the detent is really great. Lock bar access is also really great. Look how deep that's cut there for access to the lock bar. Really nice. And then finally, the detent itself, I think, is tuned properly. It's kind of a thuddy detent. Not much of an audible click, but it is solid, and it's definitely enough, keeping the blade down enough that you get that satisfaction, which is really important to me, right? Action changes over time. You can also manipulate the action itself by adding, in fact, I can actually do that, right? Why not? I have 10 weight nano oil actually linked. It would be helpful if I'm gonna plug this stuff is to make sure, there it is. The cap just came off. This stuff is really, if you have a knife that is, just not quite where you want it to be, the 10 weight nano oil is really great, and it doesn't take very much. This is why I have this stuff linked down in my description and the pinned comment. Legitimately, all it takes is a single drop on top of the detent ball. You just have to kind of make sure that drop actually gets there. And, a little bit excess is not that big of a deal. But once you've got that detent ball, like once you've got that track worked in with the 10 weight nano oil, legitimately, knives like this probably won't take more than about 10 flips, and the action becomes substantially better. In fact, this one actually almost, I think probably noticeably better at this point. The amount of encouragement it's needing, I think you guys can probably tell. It really does make a difference, and it's not super expensive. Nick Shabazz was the one who suggested that to me and many other people years ago. And he was exactly right. One drop on the detent ball is generally all you need. But the action, it's one thing. As long as the tolerances are good, it's going to improve over time. But the satisfaction of the flip, if you only have one means of deployment, which in this case you do, it's just the flipper tab, it really needs to be good, right? Weight and mass of the blade really needs to sync up with the shape of the flipper tab and the power of the throw, right? The detent tuning all has to be really great. And this knife, I'm happy to say, is good. We've been on action here for quite a while, so let's move on to carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's actually a little bit thicker than the Para 3, which is surprising because that's not the element that I notice. I think the shape and the profile really kind of draws away from the fact that it's slightly thicker. Length and height up against the PM2 and the Para 3. This guy really carries like a lot smaller knife. It is substantially less noticeable in the pocket than something like the PM2. Maybe more than the Para 3 just because of length. But height-wise, it's just not all that tall. It's just sort of a curvy boy. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness here real quick. I want to say that's probably 145, maybe even 150. It's kind of deceptive. Yeah, I was close, 143 thousandths. The key to being close is to guess within a range. Then you can say that you were close. Let's go ahead and weigh it. So for materials, like I said, we have MagnaCut. We also have a beautiful, extremely well done. So nice the way they've done this. The edges highlighting the area where it's laid in have been flattened just around the outside of the inlay. So you get that nice highlight before these sort of concave areas start. That's a really cool way to highlight that. They could have just started right off the inlay, and I think it wouldn't have looked nearly as cool. This is a detail that I feel like, not everybody would pick up on, but when I see it, I love seeing a flat border or a clear border around inlays because it makes it pop. The inlay work is beautiful, and we'll talk more about that, but we have carbon fiber, we have titanium, we have a milled clip, we have actually a black titanium backspacer with three little, I honestly think they are detent balls like laid into the backspacer, which is really random. But I think that's actually what those are. And then we have a stonewashed MagnaCut blade, and we do not have any weight reduction here. So I think this is actually going to be on the heavier side. Not crazy, but I'd venture to guess maybe approaching 5 ounces. Let's find out. No, I'm wrong. 4.34 ounces. It's actually really good. It's not a perfect, ratio there, but very good. And honestly, the balance on this, at least from what I can tell, I haven't done this yet. Yeah, the balance is right there where you're going to put your index finger anyway, so that's probably why. Okay, let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel, or the pinned comment. If you didn't know, that's what's always pinned there. The pivot is almost certainly going to be a T8, a little decorative sort of pinwheel pivot, and that's T8 for sure. We have a single T8 body screw, which actually goes all the way through to the pocket clip, and that's it. There must be something floating right here, a floating pin for the other side of the backspacer. Either way, though, this is really cool. Look at that. It's literally one screw and the pivot, and then no other hardware is showing. That is so clean, and it makes it so easy to look at and even easier to take apart. As long as you have the right tools for the job. They could have done T6 there, no, T8. As long as you have the right tools for the job, you should be good to go. But this is beautifully simple to take apart. That's just really nice. We did weight. Oh, we did blade stock thickness. Yeah, we did everything. Let's go ahead and move on here. So normally I don't like the S curvature, right? And I know that Sinkovich is not the first to do it, but whenever I see this curvature, I think of Sinkovich, specifically those Sinkovich ZT knives. Now, the straighter they are, the more I like them, right? But I don't. You get a little too much Persian in there, and too much curve, and I'm not about that. But that's a preference. That's an aesthetic preference. This is a curvy boy, but not too curvy. It's just enough that it's got some personality in the profile, but I think the real personality comes from the inlay and these concave areas in the handle. He's managed to do that, Ostap Hell, which again, I think I mentioned that at the beginning. He's managed to do that without taking away from most of the ergonomic comfort, right? I mean, sure, if the whole thing were contoured, like would it be slightly more comfortable? I guess. This inlay area is actually slightly contoured, and then these areas are just plain. It looks good. It feels good. The pocket clip rides right over the top of that, initial where it sort of tapers outward, that inlay there. And back here, it's pretty comfortable. Choked up, it's beautiful. We have, for some reason, 2 different zones for jimping, and I know a lot of people are like, well, you got to go here, and then you got your zone 2. Okay, you got your zone 1, and that's for light detail work, okay? And then you got your zone 2, or you got your zone 1. I can't remember which one I said first. Why am I doing Mr. Mackey? Okay, I don't know. But you got 2 different zones. Oh my God, I need to sleep. I'm going nuts, man. Honestly, it's very comfortable, and it complements the index finger very well in this position. This is a subtle recurve. In fact, it's a not so subtle recurve. It's definitely there. Now that might, start to look a little boogery, a little bonery while that's probably not something I can say. It's not going to look great over time as you continue to sharpen it unless you are very attentive to that line. But that even bevel will start to get a little bit wonky, especially considering the length of the blade, right? Depends on how you're sharpening, what you're sharpening with, your skill sharpening, etc., right? But it is a recurve. Now the benefit, of course, to a recurve is that curvature, that initial curvature does draw material into the belly, and I feel like a lot of people notice it immediately, even if you're not familiar with recurve knives. You cut something with a straight edge, right? Obviously geometry plays a huge role. Something like this with subtle belly, and then you cut with something like this, you notice, right? You notice that material being pulled into the belly, and it does make it a little easier. This is relatively, I'm not going to call it thin, right? It's kind of like thin medium behind the edge, but it will slice, it will cut, and I think it'll do it efficiently. There's a lot more styling going on here than there is like ultra utility, but it's still very utilitarian. It just gets to be stylish in the process. Kind of went up there at the end, but as you can see, plenty efficient at slicing something like paper. It should be, right? But the edge is done nice. It's done consistently. And it's also heat treated well. We have a nice tumbled finish. Bestech does a good job. One long swedge, like literally from the back all the way out to the tip. It is. It's got some Persian there. Just a little bit of Persian, right? Trailing point, whatever you want to call that. The more, that's some more Persian blade, right? Trailing point, Persian blade, whatever you want to call it. The only disappointment here, I don't mind a little tiny bit of billboarding. The only disappointment really is that this text out here, I don't love it. I wish they had kept it back on the flat. They tucked MagnaCut away in there. This just looks like, at first glance, it just looks like a code. Whenever I see stuff like this, it just makes me feel like a stamped and pressed, overly manufactured. This is a manufactured knife. It's just very nice. And it doesn't, in my opinion, deserve? Why did I say it like that? Probably because I need to go to sleep. It doesn't deserve to have this out here and kind of cheapening it up. I wish they had made this much smaller because it's Ostap helped design it. It deserves to have his name on it. But I wish it was back tucked away up here so that we could appreciate the obvious beauty of this knife. It's a very beautiful knife, right? It's a simple knife, and then you look up close. Oh, that's really nice. I love it. So, yeah, I think the blade's great. It's obviously manufactured with incredible precision. That's Bestech for you. Bestech knives are made in China, if you didn't know. But this is the ultra precision end of China, not the rainbow dagger with flaming skulls and a royal flush on it like you would see at the gas station, which, again, it's been a long time since I've commented on that, but what compels people to buy stuff like that? What on earth does that even mean? I remember seeing that on a pair of jeans one time. It was like sewn into the back pocket. It was like a royal flush on fire, and then there was like a flaming 8-ball, or there was like an 8-ball like in a dragon skull, and I was like, what is the story? What is happening? Where were these jeans? Like, what quest took place? Like, the person who wore these jeans, like, what adventure did they go on? I have no idea. A lot of other stuff that you see in that general theme. Joker's face. Just because. Like, yeah, like, there must be a whole group of people who, they're like, they see certain things. There's like the 8-ball, the royal flush, the Joker's face, and the dragon skull, and like tribal stuff. I don't know. I see all that stuff together, and apparently there's like, either it's all has nothing to do with each individual thing, has nothing to do with the next thing. And it's just like, yeah, hell yeah, brother. Or there is some sort of secret message there. I have no idea. But anyways, this is not this is not that. Why is the royal flush on fire? That would make it very hard to play cards. Like, if I'm trying to play cards, I don't want the cards to burst into flame. Is it metaphorical? Yeah, it's got to be I don't know. Anyways, you tell me what that means down in the comment. I've always been confused. The kids who wore Jenko jeans in middle school, I remember being like, what is happening with that kid's pants? Anyways, we have an interesting backspacer. Oh, by the way, there's like a neon yellow pivot collar here and on this screw back here. Depending on which version of the knife you get, you might get different colors. I didn't look closely enough. They might all be neon yellow. Honestly, I don't think it's a bad contrast, right? They could have done any color because it's black and silver. You could have done, yeah, literally any color, right? So it's fine. The backspacer is kind of neat. There's a little bit of, there's like a line through it, and they made it black. And then I'm very certain that these are ceramic detent balls that they just put on here. And they don't serve any purpose, but I've never seen that before, so that's kind of cool, right? I mean, we're already into the territory where there's lots of elements here that are just for the enthusiast buying it, just for the enthusiast to go ooh and ah over, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's kind of neat. The pocket clip, very well designed, very specifically designed for the curvature and profile of this knife. It's got a little, fuller in there. Follows that line. It's just a little wider, right? But it does follow the general curvature of this, so it almost kind of disappears. No mounting position for lefties. Sorry, lefties. This is more of a right-handed designy knife. I think there's a continuous ramp here. I do wish that it was shorter. It's not bad, right? It is flat, and it's knocked down enough that you don't feel it, but it sticks up a little high, so you're going to feel it, especially back here, not so much choked up. But it's good. Functionally, in and out of the pocket, it's great. We do have a steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop. I'm trying to see where I can get. Can you see it in there? There you go. I'm sure you see it. So yeah, that is definitely in there. It's kind of underneath the inlay though, so you can't see it really from the outside. There's no visible screws from the outside. There is a stop pin. It's fixed in place and it's right there. So there's a channel carved out in the blade. Stops it at the front and at the back. There is no blade play up, down, left, or right. There's a slight amount of lock stick, though I'll admit it's probably could have something to do with me having put 10 weight in it, because if it does get, you would think that it works backwards, and sometimes it does. You don't want oil on the lock face. A lot of people think that, hey, do you want to fix lock stick? Put some oil on the lock face. That's a terrible idea. I'm not giving you my opinion. I'm telling you factually that's a bad idea. You don't want lubricant on the lock face. A sticky lock is better than a slippery lock, right? All you're doing is making it more likely that the lock disengages when it's not supposed to. So no, you do not fix lock stick with oil on the lock bar. Whoever told you that is wrong, and you should not tell people that either. It's periodic lock stick. In fact, now it is not doing it, and I'm realizing that some of that oil may have gotten on the lock face, which you might think you just said that it makes it slippery. Sometimes, inexplicably, it makes it sticky. So, I don't know. But once I cleared it, it seemed to be fine. It could also just be the buildup of sort of pulverized debris as that lock face like kind of wears in. If you wipe it down with your t-shirt or some, that's what I just did. Sometimes it clears that up. So it did feel like there was a little bit, but not so much anymore. There is no pivot lash, and it's very consistent, especially now that we dropped that 10 weight in there. The detent that's a little bit of a click there. Let's listen again. Yeah, I think that's nice. We have perfect centering, which is great. And we have no detent lash or no detent wiggle. So this was very surprising in a lot of ways. We exist in a knife world where extra designiness and attention to detail is often thrown out the window for very, very simple designs because those sell. And they sell as minimalist designs. And there are some minimalist designers out there who really do care about their designs, and they put a lot of thought into them, and I think that's just fine. But I have noticed a massive uprising of very lazy minimalist designs nowadays. And what they do is they just throw the most popular steel on there. They throw some flat, untextured, just soulless titanium on there, and they call it minimalist. I hate that. You need to really think it out and still make it a tool that's accessible and organic for the human hand, and not just something that looks like it'll sell well on a promoted Instagram reel, right? This is a designy knife. This has flow. It's got consistency in the design. It's got well-placed inlays. Everything that is happening around the inlay, or everything that's happening around certain areas of knives, seems to flow into the next part of the knife, and nothing feels out of place. I don't love recurves, but it makes sense that this knife is a recurve. It would look weird if it wasn't, right? I love that little flat area on the outside of the inlay. I think that looks really cool. I actually even like the little neon yellow rings there. I like the little detent balls in the backspacer. I think that's cool. I'm really surprised they use MagnaCut. I'm even more surprised that they actually heat treated it into a great spot. 62 to 63. Nice work, Bestech. The biggest surprise is that this is not a knife that costs over $300. I've really expected to look this up and find it for like $340. No, they want $280 for this. And you know what? I think that's extremely reasonable. In fact, most $280 knives that are Chinese production knives that are, kind of like trying to cater to us, right? And people who like these materials and like the cool designs, and we like all the little clicks and the clacks and all the little details. Usually that territory is like super underwhelming. It used to be like, closer to 200 or under 200, you'd get to kind of the less, whelming stuff. The more underwhelming stuff. And then like the high 200s, you'd get something more impressive. That was years ago. Now it seems like, all the more interesting stuff kind of comes in around 350 or higher, even if it's from China. And then the entire 200 range for a lot of companies just very uninteresting. I think this is an exception. In fact, I'm not upset at all. I think that price is very fair and very reasonable, especially when they get the heat treat right. This is really cool. And truthfully, I very much recommend this knife. I think it's awesome. I think it's nice to look at. I think the materials are great. I think the price is very fair. And I was really surprised by this one. So nice work, Bestech and OSTEP. Hell, check this knife out. It comes in a bunch of different configurations, but very recommendable at that price point. That is going to be it. I'm realizing I don't know what happened to that. That's the problem with having the cards like this, and you just lose them, right? Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, I'm sorry. My brain's off, right? Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. And at least for the time being, here it is right here. You can follow me on TikTok at _metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.